Well, I mean, now that we've talked about the race, I think it's time to bring our first guest in. What do you think?
Let's bring her
This
in.
is a surprise. No one knew. Out of the blue, we were going to have our very first guest.
Not even us at an hour and a half ago.
Nope.
This took some convincing, by the way.
Reluctantly.
We talked about this last week. You said, I think we should have my mom on. I think you're watching a lot of episodes with Dale and his wife, right? And I think that's how that came to be, I'm guessing.
I got some advice on it for sure. But I'll say that, you really missed out. The content that was worth having was in the first 15 minutes of our car ride to Darlington today on Mother's Day. We carpooled, all of us together, me, Mom, Jared, and the whole crew. So that was fun. It took a while for you to get the GoPro going, but by the time you did, everything kind of died down.
Well, yeah, so I didn't necessarily think that we would all be carpooling together. So I wasn't prepared for that. And I get in the car, and like you said, you start talking, and it's just a great conversation about things that she does in her
Well, we
free
didn't get
time.
out of the driveway until I dropped a few F-bombs.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when, Mom, guys, do y'all hear? Mom, get up close to the microphone, and so people can hear you sighing every time I drop an F-bomb.
I do.
She hates it.
I hate it.
She does.
There's no reason for it.
Well, I believe it's a way to express how very passionate I am about a particular thing that we're talking about. Or, I mean, and it's also the only word that you can make a complete sentence out of by just saying that word.
Yeah.
We won't say it, of course.
Good.
But since it's Mother's Day, my pact is for this show, I'm going to drop no F-bombs for this show.
Thank you.
Just in this
Thank
segment
you.
while she's sitting here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. So she appreciates that. So yeah, I mean, we wanted to bring my mom on for Mother's Day, obviously, because I believe I got the best mom and the most supportive mom. She's been around, and of course she's been around my whole life. But she's been around and supported my racing career, and it really kind of goes unsung. They are the unsung heroes, right? The parents that make sacrifices to get their kids to where they're at. And it's no different with my parents. We came from very humble beginnings, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
We were talking about today in the car about, Jared was asking a few questions about like what he was just kind of going through his phone, like asking stuff that maybe would spur up a conversation. And I was like, yeah, I just wish I had a bigger palate when it comes to eating. My mom, we all cooked very normal, plain food.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was driven because my dad was so picky eater, right? And then I just picked up whatever we ate all the time. But Mom was like, yeah, well, it's because I had to go to work. And
yeah.
She said,
Get home at 7, 8 o'clock at night and didn't have a whole lot of time to put something together.
Yeah, I mean, but what we did, one thing about racing, though, racing really is what we did as a family, right? We tried other sports, right? I tried t-ball and stuff like that and baseball.
Basketball.
I tried basketball. I wasn't good at any of them. Like, I was just very average at best at all of them.
Actually, you were pretty good. But the time came that he had to make a decision because he couldn't do go-kart racing and another sport because they occur at the same time on the weekend.
Yep. Yeah.
So he had to make a choice which one that he wanted to do.
And I clearly knew which one I was better at. So
which sport were we talking? Baseball or basketball?
Baseball was the one I remember that had a lot of conflict.
Yes.
And what would happen is that we had other players. Yeah, my mom has a really loud ringer. And I tell her all the time, Mom, the ringer, Mom. I mean, she's got her flashlight blinking every time a text comes.
That's what happens when you turn old.
Mom thinks she's older than she really is. I have people in my basketball league that are older than you, Mom.
Huh?
Think about that. I have people older than you in my basketball league.
Not much older.
Yeah, that part's probably true. But no, it's, racing is what we did for forever. I think her passion for racing came when she got to get in a go-kart herself in the Powder Puff race with a bunch of moms at a Million Motor Raceway. And she was excited when she got out of the car. But she's my biggest fan for sure. Runs my fan club that's been going for decades now, and she's always the one. Whenever you send fan mail, please don't send fan mail, but she gets it, and then she sets it all out for me to sign and stuff here in the basement. So she's really in touch with my fans, for sure. There's a lot of fans that have been fans of mine for such a long part of my career that she's got to know them personally
since the beginning.
I mean, for God, sakes, there's only a handful
year.
of them at this point. So, you know
But
all
they
my
are
fans
true
by first name.
Fans.
I agree.
I mean, they stick with
I
you
agree.
through thick and thin.
For sure.
Through all those boos.
Oh, speaking of which,
how do you
That
feel
was
about the
awful
booze?
today.
So you don't like the booze?
I don't. I mean, I know why they're there.
Why are they there?
Because he's so outspoken.
agree.
Yes.
I don't think it's what I do on the racetrack.
But I
for
don't
sure.
think today was appropriate because
agree.
they were showing what's the word I'm looking for?
Displeasure.
Acknowledging the top 75 NASCAR
Yeah.
drivers.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. You would think for sure the fans would just acknowledge, it doesn't matter whether you liked or disliked those drivers back when they
Right.
were around. And like, I'm standing front and behind all the legends like Jeff Gordon, Bill Elliott, Jeff Bodine, all these guys. And, everyone, I mean, it was an enormous boo.
Yeah.
And I was just like, whoa, what'd I do? Like,
I think I saw a picture of it where they all were turning, looking at you.
they were. And they were like,
The picture was on my computer.
but you know what they all said, though? They said, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Jeff Bodine, he's like, hey, that's a good thing. Bill Elliott, same thing. So it was like,
And it's not like some of them haven't gone through.
yeah, for sure. I get it. I see your point, though. Probably a little disrespectful in that setting for sure. If it's driver intros, I think it's whatever, right? It's free game if you don't,
Right.
But, I mean, for so long, Kyle Busch got tons and tons of booze, and all of a sudden he switched over
switched
to
to
RC
you.
over. Yeah, no, it switched to me. I mean, Joe Logano's been the most for a while, too. Him and Kyle were back and forth, but I've clearly taken the
Kyle's
crown.
spot at JGR.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a certain amount of fans anyway that don't, Tony Stewart, there's a lot of fans that did not like when we switched manufacturers back in 2008, and then he switched back, and then bam, they love him again. So that plays a factor. Getting into it with a few Hendrick guys, that'll certainly knock you down the favoritism list for sure. But yeah, I always said, that like the last thing you want is claps. Like claps just means, woohoo! All right, next guy, yeah. Right? When you're booing or you're cheering, you have some sort of feeling about that person one way or another. So I do think that a lot of it certainly comes from comments, outspokenness.
Yep.
I think that no one likes an opinionated person, but
And there have been many a time when I have called you up and said, did you really say this?
She does. She says it all the time.
But as soon as I hear your part of it as to, instead of just the snippet of it that somebody on the radio might mention, they don't get the whole scope of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you read headline. I mean, it's why we started this podcast, really, right? Is that Dale Jr. thought the same thing. He says, well, I think you're misunderstood, and if you just get the whole word out there, then I think that people will understand you better. But I'm not here to try to be the most popular driver or anything like that. I'm not trying to win any fans over. You like me or you don't. But I certainly, my poor mom. Guys, think about that when you boo me. It's my mom is sitting back there, just hands in head, just shaking her head. And me and Mom had a good heart-to-heart a few months ago about, my outspokenness. And I was just like, Mom, this is who I am. Like, I hate to...
He got it from... Who did he get it from?
His dad. Not from me. Because I'm the type of person that I want to keep everything calm. So I'd rather just go along with
Mom
the flow
is not the
and not say
confrontational type.
anything. Yes.
Yeah, right. If the steak is not cooked properly at the restaurant, you're just going to eat it anyway, right?
Exactly.
Now, my sister Lisa, sending that thing back, right?
Because she takes after her dad 100%. So
I feel like I'm a mix of you two.
You are. I mean,
sure.
You used to be really shy, which I think people take as being rude and just not a nice person because you don't say anything.
Well, I am introverted, except when I'm with my friends, right? Like when I'm with my friends, I'm definitely a lot different person for sure. But yeah, I mean, I like to stick to my tight knit crowd, and that's about it. But it's, I mean, certainly Mom was one that's like doesn't like Denny to be in the news for controversy. That's for sure.
Exactly.
When the whole Ross thing started last year, she's like, just ignore it. Just, it'll be fine. Karma will work itself out. And this is after Gateway, right?
Yeah.
A few wrecks later, she's like, okay, whatever you got to do, right? So you want to ask, like, what does she think of?
Yeah. So what I guess since you brought that up, let's get into that. What did you watch every one of these races? You're in the bus watching.
Yep.
What did you think of the ending of today's race with Ross and the evolving Ross Chastain saga?
That's more the question, right? Is like, what's your opinion of it?
Yeah.
Same as last week. When it involved you. I mean, I think it's just racing. Yeah. I don't think that they do it on purpose. Even Ross.
Yeah.
I think you just get into it at the time that you don't think of the consequences.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, certainly I think that when I talk to Ross, and I've said this many times, that I think that there's something that goes on when he's in the moment and his brain's thinking about, well, what am I going to do to make a move here, that he does get locked into one thought, and it just he gets blinded of all the, well, what else? What's the result of that? Like, is there another way? Is there another avenue? But everyone works differently. So,
but what about when that was all at the expense of your son? It's easy to watch when you're just an innocent bystander, right? But
right. I mean, it's hard to sit there and hear people say all these awful things when your opinion is different. But as I've always said, that's what makes NASCAR such a fun sport, is because you can have 5 members of a family all rooting for 5 different people.
We saw it today on the TV, right? The Kyle Larson husband and the Ross Chastain wife that were that they were showing on Fox, and it was, the wife was rooting for Chastain, the husband.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
yes.
And then when they crash, she looks right over the husband and says, "I'm ready to go home." And so that was awesome. And, I mean, listen, that's why I liked Bill Elliott when I grew up. It's because my dad liked Dale Earnhardt.
Right.
I just wanted to root against his rival.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is what's great about it, right? Is that it creates conversation, it creates storylines. Certainly, it is exciting for sure. But yeah, it's awesome that we convinced you to come on today on a special Mother's Day. I just want to say thank you to you for being the best mom, the most supportive mom. My mom sacrificed a lot to help me get to where I got to, and certainly it was not an easy road. I never would encourage any family to take the risks that we took financially to get me to this point, but luckily it did pay
But
off.
like
in the
your
end.
dad always said while we were going through all this stuff and putting forth all of our money towards it, some people use their money for vacations, to buy a boat, to do all different things. We decided to put our money in giving you the ability to do what we could to.
And I'm imagining at some point they realized I was not the college type.
Yes.
So
yeah, we'd always say this is your college fund.
Yeah. So you better be good at it. You better have a skill.
Yeah. I tell you what, the day that he graduated, I was so happy.
High school.
Oh, high school. Yes. Yes.
Listen,
I was
Jared,
so happy.
back then, I was part of a huge class, and I am certain that they gave me a diploma just to get me out of school. I mean, I'm certain of it.
Yeah.
But I always, I was so tired in school because I was on the work program. My dad started Chesterfield Trailer and Hitch, and so I would get out of school at noon every day. Then I'd go to work at my dad's trailer shop, and I'd work till 6 p.m., 5 or 6 p.m., whenever the last customer was gone. And then
Work on the race car.
worked on the race car till 10, 11 at night. So I didn't do my homework. Like, I didn't do anything. Then I went home. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I sleep. I barely make the school bus in the morning, or I drive to school. And then I'm just figuring out, well, man, how am I going to pass this class? Like, school was the last thing on my mind because it was all about racing and work. That's all I did. And so.
And his dad always made him work on Saturdays. We were open part of the day on Saturdays. And before he could load up the car to go racing, he would have to run the shop that Saturday.
Yeah.
Before we left. You actually worked almost 40 hours a week
Plus
while
school.
going to school. Yeah.
And I had to work on my race car.
Yes.
I mean, my
and you
dad.
tried to sneak out of work and go to.
Yeah. In between
next door,
customers and stuff, it's slow. I'm sneaking over the race car, seeing like what I got to tinker on there. But yeah, I mean, my dad used to say to me, like, this isn't my hobby, it's your hobby. So like, this isn't just a,
And boy,
you just sit back
hear
and
him
drive.
hollering through the shop, Denny, get over here.
Oh, I hear the echoes now. Because I was the race car shop was basically just part of the trailer shop. It was in the last couple bays of it, and so he would catch me over there working on the race car during work hours, and customers would roll in. He would be pissed. So I mean, it was fun times though. The one thing I loved about the trailer shop though, I enjoyed my job. Like, I loved going to work every day. I loved being in customer service. I loved trying to figure out a wiring problem or, welding or fabricating or whatever I had to do that day. So it was a fun job.
And you were good at it.
Yeah. I mean, I had to learn so quickly because my dad had back issues. So, he only could hang around work till 2, 3 in the afternoon. He'd have to go home. And so, he left me, an 18-year-old, pretty much to run that company, for the most part. And so that's I got my jump start on running a business pretty early.
Well, that explains a lot because I feel like everyone looks at you and says, oh, Denny, he's a full-time race car driver. Oh, and now he's a full-time race car owner. And now he's starting a podcast. Why the F would you want to bother doing that too? So
thank you, Jared.
A lot. Well, no, I'm just saying.
You didn't drop.
She said that.
Oh, I thought about that well before that came out of my mouth. I said I can't say that word.
Well, Mom, thank you.
Wait, hold on. Before she leaves, before you leave, and we kind of just talked about this, but obviously today, a special day being Mother's Day, but also Denny got his NASCAR 75 recognition. I'm just curious, when you were there at the brunch watching him get called up on the stage and recognized for the honor, and then standing behind all of these legends who I thought you probably watched on your TV as bigger-than-life characters.
Absolutely.
What you were thinking in that moment.
Almost brought me to tears. Never did we ever think. I mean, at the time that his entire life, said that he wanted to be a race car driver. Our hopes were that he would at least get the opportunity to race against them, race with them, be one of them. Never did we even think about winning a Daytona 500, much less winning 3 Daytona 500s. Never crossed our mind that he'd be one of the top 75 drivers of all times. It amazes me, and it amazes me the person that he has become, from that kid that didn't want to go to school, didn't want to study, and now that's all he does. I mean, he studies everything, and has made us very, very proud.
My mom was one of my first phone calls after the NASCAR 75, and
yes,
just saying how proud she was of me. Obviously, it certainly meant a lot to me because it all. I'm here because of the sacrifices that my parents made. So, thank you. Just want to say thank you and bring you on and introduce Mama Lou. She actually. One last thing too. Thank you for sticking up for me on Twitter. You
did?
Posted a tweet for the first time in forever because over the
I
whole.
Never, and I
over
didn't
the
know.
whole.
Mama Lou posted a tweet.
And I didn't know if I was doing it right. I mean, I don't even know if it showed up. And it
only
show
on the
up
replies. Only to Dave Moody, because
What did you say?
it was about the whole Martinsville clock thing, basically.
Uh-huh.
And what I was saying is. Basically, I was poo-pooing on the All-Star trophy.
Yeah.
That, by the way, I think is a beautiful piece of art. I just don't know that it's a trophy. It's a piece of art. It's not a trophy. But that's
It's not a
fine.
trophy because they don't put any
markings of All-Star race winner.
Right, the
May
date or whatever.
2023. And then that kind of brought up the whole Martinsville clock thing because
And the clock doesn't have that on it. Not all of them.
No.
my clocks are in boxes in my garage because it's just it is just a clock. I actually saw
It's not just a
it's
clock.
not just a clock. Let me be clear about it. I understand the significance of, I know I'm getting off the hinges here, of the significance of the Ridgeway clock because that's what the closest, the biggest business, I guess, in Martinsville that there is, right? We'll make a commemorative trophy of a Ridgeway clock. Like, it's just like they do at Talladega, right? They've got that symbol and the Michigan trophy has got it. Like, I get that, but you have one of my Martinsville clocks.
I have one of the clocks, but I don't know what date or that it was a trophy. And the thing is that when he's older and has grandkids and they see these clocks, if he's no longer around, what are they going to know about these clocks?
Because we had a grandfather clock in our home. In Virginia when I was growing up. And so she's got that clock and she's got the Martinsville clock. And you were saying, I don't know which one's
I think that's news to most people. I thought, up until you tweeted about it, I thought the date and everything was engraved in the glass on the clock.
No. Listen,
and actually, you
Clay
could
Campbell,
have it done.
Clay Campbell is a great
gonna be,
dude. I guarantee you he'll have it on the next Martinsville clock. I talked to him this weekend.
A lot of change happens because of the show.
No, I know. I guarantee it. And listen, I understand the significance of winning at Martinsville.
I love those clocks.
I understand the clock totally, right? But for my mom's sake, please
tell me which clock.
Please signify that this is a trophy
Yes.
and not just a grandfather clock.
And the date.
For my mom.
Yes.